Melyssa Ford is a former video vixen from the 2000s and early 2010s, and she is now on the Joe Budden podcast as like one of the microphones. She pretty much, is a regular member, of course, and now she has her own podcast that I'm pretty sure is on the Joe Budden network. If not, it's on something else, man, whatever. But listen, it's called Hot and Bothered with Melyssa Ford, and she has an episode called Childless Cat Lady where she goes over her whole love life because she is older, but she is breathing on 50. You see, she's 48. So with that being said, we're going to get into this, and we're probably going to do 2-3 parts of this because it's 48 minutes, and I don't want to react to any part too long. I really want to watch this whole thing. So let's get to it.
We've all seen the most recent political climate as it relates to the election. And it seems like women, we always seem to be the brunt of some kind of attack. And I don't really understand why. But when J.D. Vance said this,
saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
At first I was offended.
I want to highlight that he mentioned bad choices. So childless women that make bad choices, basically.
And then when I thought about it, I really just had to laugh because never been married, childless cat ladies. Honestly, that sounds like a dream come true to me. I don't know. Like solitude, my own choices, and animals that love me. Oh my God, somebody, call the cops. This sounds awful. But anyways, I know that I'm not the only one that felt that their life choices were put under attack. So this episode is called I Am 48, I Am Child Free, and I've never been married. And guess what? That's okay. I never made it down the aisle, but I have been engaged in the past. How many engagements? I would say 2.5. Let's start with the 0.5 since that was the first one. I was involved with a man who loved me. He was good looking, he was tall, he was charismatic, gregarious. Everybody loved him. My mom loved him, my sister loved him, my niece loved him, my friends loved him. Everybody loved him. But there was something inside of me that just said, this is not perfect. It's the furthest thing from perfect. He would say things like, nobody's ever going to love you the way that I love you. And I believed him. I wrestled with this internal sense of guilt. I wrestled with the guilt of honestly wanting to be free, honestly wanting to live my life and to date and to experience other men and to experience other things and other places. I just wanted to live my life. I had moved.
And that's the issue. These chicks think that they need to have a bunch of experiences with different men instead of going and building a family while they have their youth and while their value is at the peak, to where they could get the best mate that they can and build from there. Women nowadays are not interested in being homemakers or building families. They're only interested in that after they have 2 or 3 kids by some drug dealers or like the undesirable guys when it comes to a long-term relationship, just a desirable guys for sex. Now, Melyssa Ford is about to be 50, and she still doesn't have a guy, but she also doesn't have a kid. So we're going to see how that pans out over the course of this video. But when it comes to a man, especially in this time frame, it makes sense for a man to go out and get experience because women are going to get experience regardless. Men have the burden of performance and ways that we have to perform in reference to women that, experience will help us in. I'm going to just give you 2. We have to lead them, and we also have to be able to fuck them. I'll even give you a third one. We also have to be able to bag them, And when I say fuck them, I mean good. So when you have a woman, because the product of a woman that we get nowadays is different than the product that, people were getting in 1950 or 1940, or even in different parts of the world where, chicks don't get deflowered and they have arranged marriages. It's a completely different product because this product has been used and tampered with, et cetera, et cetera. So, guys have to be prepared for that to some extent, or you end up in a Travis Hunter situation because you get success and you are in a position to bag a bad chick. You bag a bad chick. The chick is a stripper who was shaking her butt on other dudes' groins at parties and stuff like that. And you don't know because she has mastered the art of becoming a chameleon. And guess what? You lack experience. So, from those standpoints that I mentioned, it makes sense for a man to go and get experience and stuff like that. There is no developmental benefit as far as a woman getting experience with other men. Nothing that can benefit an actual relationship. Nothing that, she can benefit a man with. Everything that I mentioned as far as leading and all of that stuff, all of that is for the benefit of the woman. All of that is for the benefit of the woman. Women definitely want somebody that could lead them. And we don't got to go deeper than that. But when you look at a chick experience and different dudes, the only thing it does, if you suck meat, like, yeah, you after 48 meats in your mouth, after getting to know like Charles and Edward and all of these other guys and what they like, you come to this dude, this Travis Hunter motherfucker, and it's like, he ain't never had his meat sucked. You get to blow his socks off. That's the only benefit I could see from it as far as a developmental benefit to where it can benefit guys. So the truth is, it's pointless. It's pointless for chicks to go out and experience a bunch of different dudes.
And so to find myself inside of a relationship that felt so stifling at this very young age and not having the vocabulary to speak up for myself and articulate that somebody who loves you would not say those things to you. They wouldn't say that nobody will ever love you the way that I love you, because that indicates that there's a part of me that's broken or there's a part of me that's unlovable. But I didn't know how to articulate this.
Or it just indicates that the guy that you were dealing with may think that he is incredible in loving you better than anybody else can. Maybe it could indicate that. But, you guys may not know because you may not watch the Joe Budden podcast or anything with her on it. She is a feminist. Like, she's one of the types of people that get into calling people narcissistic and stuff like that. So this is the type of stuff you can expect. That to be flipped into, oh, he was controlling.
So I stayed in this relationship that I was wildly unhappy in for approximately 3.5 years, close to four. And I have to admit, I was not faithful in this relationship. Nothing that I'm proud of, but I just chalk that up to I was really, really young and I was hood famous. I was on the covers of magazines, on your local newsstand. So everybody recognized me. And that was another source of pressure that I felt being inside of this relationship rather than being free to explore all of my options. And so one day,
Listen, man, we talk about whole professions all the time, like nurses and etc. But when you mess with somebody that is like in a real whole profession, like being a video vixen, something to where they showing off their body, like you messing with a model or something like that. What boys say? Recreational use only. That's what that is, bro. Don't play yourself.
I was going through some drawers, folding laundry, placing clothes, in the drawers and such. And I found it. I found a box. And when I saw it, I said, please, God, don't let this be what I think it is. And I opened the box. And there it was. It was a ring. And the only thing that I could think was that it was an engagement ring. It sure as hell was not a promise ring. We were way beyond that. We were not in high school. I was not wearing this boy's varsity jacket. This was an engagement ring. If I knew this man the way that I knew him, that proposal was going to be very public. And that terrified me. I didn't want to have to say no in front of our friends and family and publicly humiliate him. He did not deserve that, but I also could not see myself saying yes in front of everybody just to save face, and then later on have to break it to him like that this is not something that I was going to be able to go forward with. So what I did instead was I packed up all my belongings while he was out of town and put them in storage and flew back to Canada. And then I had the conversation about us breaking up over the phone. I know what you're probably thinking as well. Yo, Melyssa, that's fucked up. I know.
Of course, but listen, you have to expect women to be cowards. You have to expect that. All that, ooh, so brave, so bold, so stunning. All of that is bullshit, and that's why they say it, because women are not built to be brave. They are not the ones who are supposed to go downstairs and check if the robber is there. Like that, that's not their role. They're not supposed to go out and kill the lion and bring it home. You know, they're the ones who are supposed to turn it into a mink. And, you know, we supposed to eat lion meat that they cooked up. That's how it works. So this coward move is not surprising. Instead of being a grown adult and having a conversation and breaking it to him before it even happens, she ran and then did it over the phone in another country. Extremely cowardly for somebody you spent 3+ years with. That thought enough of you to buy a ring and wanted to propose to you in front of all his loved ones and stuff like that. That's very cowardly. And she had been feeling like she was suffocating, but she had been hoeing. She already said, she already admitted she was cheating. Why didn't she? And see, that's another thing that I have to highlight. Chicks will cheat with a dude that they think is better than you or whatever the case may be. Somebody that just, you know, excites them sexually, whatever the case may be. But it's hypergamy. They're not going to leave unless they have security with a better option. Until they are somewhat locked in with a better option, they're not going to do that. And if they're not locked in with a better option, by the time they leave you, whatever their escape plan was, they already put all the pieces together, whatever it was.
It took years for me to make peace with this decision. I have self-flagellated over this decision. I have beaten myself up every way to Sunday that you possibly can. I tried to reconcile with him at one point, which was a big mistake. That is the 0.5.
I had an ugly duckling phase. Don't tell anybody. I destroyed all the pictures, so there's no proof. Before I became a video model and a model, and I was like known as the brain amongst all my friends. You know, so I was studying forensic psychology with a minor in English literature in university. So the fact that I started to become known more for my looks than my brain is kind of ironic. The attention just snowballed, and I started to see that I was able to, you know, make a business out of it. If it didn't make money, it didn't make sense.
Society places an enormous amount of pressure on us to check certain boxes. The box of go to school and excel. You've got to pursue a career based on what you went to school for. And you've got to excel and become successful. And you have to have your 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year plan, all while you're in your 20s. Get married, get the white picket fence, and have 2.3 kids. Never figured out the point situation when it came to the statistics, because like, what's a third of a kid? But I digress on that. The problem with the boxes is that we never check in with ourselves. It is never, ever, ever our first thought as to, well, what is it that I actually want? I am now, you know, welcoming into my circle a lot of women who checked all those boxes. And for all intents and purposes, a lot of the stuff really actually did not work out. Yes, they ended up with the children, but they ended up in sometimes a loveless, sometimes an abusive, and sometimes a marriage of convenience. Sometimes they didn't even get the marriage, they just got the kids, and they inherited a whole lot of struggle and strife. And it's not to say that their choices are better or worse than the choices that I made. These are just choices. But for us women, I feel like,
And see, this is the type of stuff to make a chick sleep good at night, knowing that other people's marriages and relationships are failing and et cetera, when they don't have a marriage or they don't have kids, et cetera, et cetera. So this is very comforting to know, well, it could have ended up like that. You could even say the same for guys, if I'm being honest, if I'm just keeping it straight and even. You could say the same for guys. Like, I could look around right now like, oh, man. You look at Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless got a wife. But Skip Bayless is out here trying to pay $1.5 million for some box. So I could look at Skip Bayless and say, man, listen, man. Or you in your 50s or 60s or even 70s could look and say, man, I ain't been married, but these guys at 70 don't really like their wives, and they trying to pay 1.5 mil to, or we could go and look at a divorce, a crazy divorce, and be like, well, at least I ain't got to worry about having my shit taken. So we could do that. But you got to ask yourself, and you got to notice, what is the value in having a long-term partner in the first place? What are the values, as far as the things that you will value as far as having a long-term partner in the first place? And you have to ask, is it worth the risk? And if you assess that it is not worth the risk, then you don't need to look at other people's situations so that you could go to sleep at night. Because you could say, well, those are risks I'm not willing to take. Lil Baby himself said, I am not signing no paperwork for no marriage. He is committed to that. And the reason he is committed to that is because the risk of losing a big chunk or half of his money is a risk that he is not willing to take as somebody who actually sold drugs in the trenches and has escaped poverty. And he also knows he can't do this forever and his time is running out because he's not as hot as he used to be. So he might be getting $200K for a show now. He's not going to be on everything. He's not going to be getting $200K per show in 10 years. And if he lives a long life, this is the heyday right now where he makes the bulk of his money. So why fuck that up and just get divorced and then boom, all your shit is gone. Now you got to like transition into acting and you got to be like Ice-T doing CSI or Law and Order or whatever in your 50s and 60s.
our choices oftentimes have never really, really belonged to us. And when we have tried to exert our sense of independence, we are shamed for it. At this point, let me go on to the second engagement. So I'm 28 years old and I have left the previous relationship, the 0.5, and I have met this man who, the minute I saw him, I knew I was going to be with him. He just was it. I don't know how to describe it. And the second I heard his voice, I said, I'm going to marry this man. I don't know what it was. Like, he had this Louisiana drawl. It's my favorite Southern accent. He was huge, like 6'1", 246 pounds of hulking muscle. He had skin the color of like red clay. He had this thick neck, big round head. He had this crooked tooth that drove me wild. His flaws were like manna from heaven for me. And I loved his dirty draws and I could just sleep in his armpit right after he'd played a game of like pickup basketball. That is how much I loved this man. And our courtship was a whirlwind. He wined and dined me. He bought me lovely, lovely gifts. I'd wake up to those baby blue Tiffany boxes just laid on the pillow right next to me. We could go to my favorite store, and as long as I put on a little fashion show for him, everything I wanted I could get. But when I say that the gifts really mattered nothing to me, it was this man. He was the gift to me. That's just a fact.
I want you to ask yourself 2 questions, and I'm going to say something else as far as the statement. So the first question, is there a chick in your past that you would talk about like this as a guy? So that's number 1. Even if you're a girl listening, that's number 1. If you're a girl, that's a for sure. But that's number 1. Number 2, as a guy, do you think that there are women you have been a gift to? So that's the second question. You ask yourself those questions. I'm going to say a third thing that is just a statement. When we go back to the Skip Bayless stuff and paying $1.5 for some box, when we go back to that, he was not the gift. And guess what? I don't know if it's alleged that Shannon Sharp was smashing the chick who made the allegations of the lawsuit, but I think that's what's going around. And Shannon was the gift. And that's just what it is, man. When it comes to this money stuff, like, yeah, you could buy it. You could buy it. But it's a whole different feel when she wants you, and you should seek the people who want you.
And we were 6 months into our relationship when the first sign of trouble appeared. I was in Denver for All-Star Weekend, and I was working for BET at the time. So I had a lot of responsibilities. I had to make a lot of appearances. I had to interview a lot of people, and a lot of those people were athletes. And he was back home. And I did not know that he was jealous. It didn't even cross my mind. And so when I got home after an event and I was perturbed by, an interaction with a strange man at a party that I had been at. He'd said something vile to me and it hurt my feelings. And all I wanted was to be comforted. And so I went back to my hotel room and I called my boyfriend and I just asked him to just tell me that he thought that I was beautiful and that he loved me. And he didn't do that. He just pressured me to tell him what happened. Why are you asking me to do this? And so I told him what happened, and he responded by saying, "Why would I want to date such a weak bitch that would be that offended by what some strange guy has to say to her?" There's just no way that he just said that to me. I'm sorry, what? And he said, "You heard me." And I said, "I'm really confused right now." And he was like, "I'm sure you are." I felt like I was talking to a stranger. There's no way that this was the person that I had just spent the last 6 months with, completely absorbed with, and in the throes of like love and ecstasy with. And I said, I'm glad that I'm finding out who you really actually are now rather than later. He said, "Yeah, I'm sure you are." Click. And hung up the phone on me. I cried myself to sleep that night. And the next day I had to cover a ladies' luncheon, the wives of the NBA. And so I had to be perfect and pretty. And I had to act like the man of my dreams had not just told me to basically go F myself. And so while I was getting ready, a large bouquet of flowers was delivered. My makeup artist said, "Mel, you should read the card." And it said, "You're beautiful to me and I love you. And I'm sorry." And then his name. I burst into tears. It just flew out of my face. So basically, my whole beat face just melted. And I called him and I said, "I received your flowers." And he said, "I am so sorry." And I told him, "I'm going to forgive you because I love you. But you can't ever speak to me like that ever again."
This is just so amazing to me for a few reasons. And I understand that she was younger, but we going to cook for a quick second. The first thing is I identify. Like as soon as he said, "Well, why would I be with a weak ass bitch?" I already knew what it was. I was going to let her cook for a second. Dude is a super player. The way that think about how she described the first dude. She was basically repulsed by the first dude. And she wanted to get out of that relationship. But she felt so trapped in all of that. And now she gets with this guy. And it is the best she has ever felt in her life. And this guy is so amazing. And he is so, she just wants to smell his sweat, the sweat from his drawers. She wants to smell the sweat from his drawers. If Melyssa Ford is Melyssa Ford at that time, the name held a lot of weight. But on top of that, she is at all these poppin' rappers' videos. She is at All-Star Weekend with all the NBA players. She is the hottest model she's the hottest black model for real. There's only a few that's really like touching her at that point in her career, like Tyra Banks, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to be clear, she wasn't a model she wasn't a supermodel like Tyra Banks. She was a video vixen and stuff, but her name still held a lot of weight. So my whole point is, wait a minute. So you got all the options in the world as a chick, right? This dude bagged you. Everybody got to know he had to be Mr. Bitches 2.0. We in 2024, we on 5.0 now. So if you got a Mr. Bitches right now, he's typically going to be 5.0. But back in like the 2000s, Mr. Bitches 2.0, he was very advanced for the time when it came to getting bitches, I'm sure. So he had all his options and he was able to bag the chick that everybody wants as far as like most regular guys. He was able to bag her. And not only that, she was highly attracted to him. So other women of that caliber were absolutely attracted to him. And guess what? I'm positive. I don't know who he is. I know he was slaying shit before he got with her. But when we talk about a super player, what a super player does is they get in and they get out. They will fake a relationship. They will have the little relationship. It be something phony, but they still be doing they want to typically. They be cheating or they be entertaining other chicks, whatever they be doing. Now, the chick that they get with, super players, like when they do this, it's typically the chicks that be hoes. Let me just say that. So, the video vixen stuff, what it comes with. Game made the song that wouldn't get far. And, he basically exposed a lot of the video vixens and stuff like that. They were the OnlyFans chicks in Dubai before that was even a thing. They was messing with all the popping ball players and rappers and stuff for money. Shit, when Cameron was recently, last year, beefing with Melyssa Ford, he said, he dropped a name. He said somebody smashed her in like for like $2,700. And Cameron wanted to expose more, but that's who we're talking about. That's who we're talking about. So the chick is a hoe, but she is bad. She's one of the baddest on the planet. He knows, like most guys who are just aware, he knows you cannot expect this type of chick to be faithful. You just cannot expect her to be faithful. That is why they get in and they don't care what she does. They don't care if she's faithful or not because they going to do their thing typically. And then they get out. But this is the other thing about it. When you got a guy like that, they typically love to engage in the toxic behavior that a regular man really doesn't care for, that a regular mentally healthy man doesn't care for. So him saying, why would I be with a weak ass bitch? That's a curveball. And then sending her the flowers, guess what? It had the psychological effect he probably wanted it to have. She burst out crying. So we gonna see how this shit plays out. We gonna see it through, my boy. We gonna see it through. But the last thing I want to touch on, why this is so amazing to me, is because when a chick got them hard eyes, it really don't matter what you do. They gonna stick around for the most part. So I can't wait to see what happened that, compelled her to leave this guy. I can't wait because she's seen exactly who she was, or exactly who he was, and she still decided to stay. She still decided to give him a second chance.
He's like, I promise I won't. So whenever people wonder, how do people end up in abusive relationships and why do you stay? The reasons
Oh no, not the DV number in the corner of the screen. This might get bad.
are aplenty. But I will start by saying that that is not the way that it begins. It begins with love bombing. It begins with flowers, candy, gifts, and the wonderful sex and the cuddles and the pillow talk. And this is how it begins. And it can last for a lengthy amount of time before that person really shows up. The true version of themselves shows up. And by that point, you start to bargain with yourself and they start to apologize. And their apologies are usually very, very sincere because at the end of the day, I truly believe that they believe their apologies are real. They just have an illness inside of them. And I would also venture to say that the first signs of abuse are usually not physical. And by the time it gets to physicality, you start to reason that you were an active participant in it. You start to reason with yourself that you started the fight by angering him or saying something that was out of pocket. Or you reason with yourself that you are no shrinking violet. So it's not like you got hit and cowered in a corner. You fought back. These are the things that you reason and bargain with yourself that allow you to stay in this level of toxic relationship. And so, as much as I would love to say that that was the last time that he spoke to me in that way, and that was the last time that I received it, that would not be the truth. We were together for another year and a half, and I accepted his marriage proposal. And a lot of you would probably be asking, why would you do that? Why would you accept the marriage proposal of this man that was so abusive towards you?
I'm not asking why because I know the answer. Because women.
And unfaithful towards you and really bad at it. Like I found out everything all the time and I don't really have an excuse for it other than I was addicted to him. Was working at BET at the time when we were dating, and more than once observations were made about bruises on my body and how skinny I was getting, obviously from the stress. And people had voiced concern for me, but I just shooed them away. We tussle. It's fine. No problem. But there really was a reason for concern. I stayed through it all and accepted the marriage proposal. The final straw for me was his reaction to finding out that my mom was ill. I had gotten a phone call while I was out with him and his family, and he was acting up as per usual. And I got a phone call from my aunt telling me that my mom had been rushed to the hospital. I was in Texas. So in order for me to rush home to see my mom, I would have to leave Texas, go home to New York, pick up my passport, and then go to Canada. And when I told him what was going on, Obviously, I was looking for empathy and sympathy and compassion, and that was not what I got. It was on this day that I finally could see the forest for the trees. If I stayed in this relationship, in 10 years, I would have that white picket fence, and I would have the 2 kids, and I would be an abused woman, hiding her bruises and her broken bones and her scars from her family and her friends and society at large, because I was a forward facing media personality / model. My mom's sickness was, strangely enough, a blessing in disguise. And that relationship came to an end. And that was the first full engagement. So 1.5. So that's where we are right now.
Now, I'm not going to lie to you. When I said I can't wait to see how this ended, I did not see that coming. Boy, that was a curveball of the day, because let me tell you something, dog. You know super players. She definitely knows super players. I know super players. Like, that's not the normal right there. Like, yeah, it might be some verbal toxic stuff, but like the physical, that's not a standard thing with the super players. So I didn't expect that. The thing I will say, and this is some real stuff, because we, whatever. Her not having kids by him and not getting married to him is a great thing. That's great. You cannot really hold that against her. The only thing I would hold against her is that she stayed for so long after that first incident. The thing is, like, when it comes to women in relationships, I just don't think that they require the same amount of respect a man requires. And you could say, oh, the male ego, you damn right, because we got to do different shit and we got to stand in the world a different way than women do. So yeah, respect has to be important to us, or else we're going to be flimsy in reality when it comes time to stand up for ourselves and do different things, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think respect in all senses weighs heavier to a man than it does to a woman. So she could accept that. As far as a guy, if you were a guy and the situation she went through, if the shoe was on the other foot in a similar type of way, no dude that is a winner is just going to accept that type of disrespect. And I'm not saying that she accepted it, because he did apologize, but it would leave an irremovable stain on a relationship. And this is also another issue when it comes to respecting men. Like, when a woman don't respect you, you can't get it back. Just chalk it up. I've seen it. You've heard about it all over the internet. You've probably seen it yourself in real life. Just chalk it up. So it's a little different. Like, respect is something that is necessary for men, and even from women. They know that it is necessary for them to respect a man to be able to love him. They know that. It doesn't work the same way on the other end as far as men and women. But, dude was overall a piece of shit. That second one, he was a tremendous piece of shit. And it is what it is. So we're going to have a part 2. I don't know if there's going to be a part 3. We will find out. So tune in next time on the adventures of Dumper and Melyssa Ford. Yeah, let me know your thoughts. I'm gone.